almost there, but we still have a last part, which will actually be to look a bit in the future. First, my colleague Guy will give his viewpoint on systemic change in the clothing and textile sector, and then Frédérique will tell more about the next steps within the herewear project itself. And as soon as everything is up again, I'll give the word to Guy.
So it's a pleasure to also still address you. On the one side, really a pleasure, but on the other side, I think also really a challenge. It has been a long day, a lot has been said, so what is still that? Nevertheless, a couple of words, and trying to frame it maybe also from the inside, where we think that herewear can still contribute as a role and so on. So to just quickly start, I would like to think about 5 years back when we started to look at this potential project. And it was mentioned before, I think almost everything I will say was touched on before, but it's quite an ambitious project. Well, I think we can thank the EC for that, because this is what they published. And so if you just look at the title and you put something in there as reinventing fashion, I think they have been very, very ambitious to put something like this. And one of the first reflexes that we made when trying to answer the call was, can you just do what they ask? Meaning, they saw it as, you just replace our current material with bio-based material and you will do it? Or do you really need to go much broader and see a lot of other aspects that have to follow to make the switch? I think we're very happy that we indeed chose for not going with, let's say, the traditional, the larger scale, the more global approach, but try to look and link it to local. And it struck me also in the presentation this morning about the scenarios, that one of the key things to look into the future, to develop these potential scenarios, was really about the aspect local versus global. Of course, also some other things, but that it was really one of the key parameters. I think it's also clear if we look at herewear, that we touch on some elements that fit for more than one of these scenarios. And in the end, it was also mentioned this morning, probably we don't end up in one specific scenario, but it will be a mix. Maybe geographically worldwide you can have here or there a bit more, but also even within Europe, that we end up with a mix. Some things might be still very fast, very global. It was also mentioned in the panel. It's like everything I will mention came back, I think, earlier. But that it's not necessarily a contradiction between global, local. Also not necessarily that we have to fight against fast fashion or so, but that really can be a mix. So local, global, key aspect. In herewear, I would say we had two more core aspects. It's about the bio-based and it's about the circular. I think the point for us is now that we're almost at the end of the project. Are they still relevant? Did we make a good choice with these three? Looking at, let's see, how textile will probably change, potentially change. And I hope, and probably after today you are already convinced, but let's take a look and see how they still relate. First of all, the bio-based. Here it's maybe very simple about the fundamental change, but still on a picture. Basically we go from the oil to something more renewable. And I think we're all convinced on long term, and I stress on long term we have cotton and then we have some other things. But the key thing, plastic side, what can we offer or what is being offered? Then you can see on the graph there, if you look around 24, 25, we are roughly 3 to 5 million tons. So compared to the 100, and this is not only for textiles, that's also for plastics, for a lot of other things. So it's only a very, very small fraction. I think that's one thing that shows it's ongoing, but also mentioned before, innovation takes a long time. I think especially switching from fundamentally about raw materials. And one thing I want to add here is there's also often discussion about can we use bio-based materials and how will it interfere a lot of the impact. Of course there is impact, and of course we have to be careful with this resource. But then if you look here at the circle, you see that the most land use currently is by far for raising cattle for our food. And if you look for bioplastics, it's now not even a fraction of a percent, but I would say a fraction of what is available to do and to make more bioplastics. And if you look then back at the graph shown before about the different materials, what is there on offer already? Well, for example, for polyamide, you have bio-based polyamides. Also, if you look at the cotton, probably this is a good thing with the man-made cellulose and so, there's some other. If you look for polyester, it's probably a lot more emerging, but still there is a variety of materials coming, like the one we used in here, where PLA, but also some other candidates, for example the BHA, and maybe some other, at this moment, more exotic ones, but probably with good potential to be really fitting for the textile. And one thing I also wanted to mention explicitly, and I know Annalisa already left, but there's also this part, let's say, really, I would say, fundamentally more different in the way they're produced, like this biofabrication, like growing mycelium and so. I think also judging from the questions that came today for this presentation, I think it's quite clear, it's attractive and probably has a lot of potential, but yeah, it's still open. And so if we look, I would say, at bio-based, there's still a long way to go, but I think it is feasible. Probably we will end up, as also mentioned before, with a larger variety of fibers, because now polyester is so advanced, and even if you come in different grades, it's all polyester. If you go bio-based, we probably have to deal with a larger variety, but can also have disadvantages. If we look, the material hardly can be replaced one-to-one, in the sense that you have some polymers where you can use a drop-in, so you basically produce identical material, but bio-based or partially bio-based. Most often you see it's really a polymer that comes close, but not exactly the same. So the properties are different. So what we think correctly addressed in herewear, then you have to take into account from the beginning, from the design. And also then it means that for processing, you might really need new technologies. It's maybe today a bit less touched on, but I think it's really the case. Take again this biofabrication, but also how we process the textiles. It can be really different because they're bio-based. If you then look at the second aspect about the circular, there I think to show again the fundamental change is quite easy on a slide. So you have the top, let's say our linear way of working. You just produce and you throw it away. I'm sure you're all familiar also with the lower part. You have all the different options. We know about these different things about the art. What I would like to stress is, if one looks at it pure from the textile side, then I think the part on reuse and so is for the textile sector a bit further away, because it's more, let's say, in the retail, it's the shops and so on who play a role. And if you look on the left, when we really go back to chemical recycling, it's the chemical industry. It's large scale, I would say, by definition. So I think there's a lot more in the middle for the textile industry that can be like fiber to fiber level, but especially what in my view is still not explored a lot is things like fabric recycling. How do you keep as much value as possible from maybe, if you have some textile items where still part of the fabric is good, how can you combine that? It's really different from the way we now process the material, but probably both from environmental viewpoint and from, yeah, let's say the opportunities, it's an important one. So this is the change to make. Where are we? Well, it's maybe a bit more difficult slides, and I realize it's small print with these Sankey diagram. If you look in the top, that is like export, it's a reasonable fraction. The 2 out of, in total, about 13. Recycling, less than 1. And then the 2 biggest ones in the bottom, landfill and basically incineration. Just maybe still the numbers are again the 1 million tons in Europe per year for the whole of Europe. So it gives an idea. It's not even worldwide, it's just within Europe. We are the most advanced, but you still see how much goes to landfill, which is quite a pity. If you then look at it, how to change it, because why is this the case? Well, because economically it makes the most sense for the moment. What can change it? Well, if you really want to change, I think, the fundamental play field or stimulate it to go away from this, then I think we need external help. We need also, a couple of times mentioned today, we need like policies, we need to have the right mechanisms in place to make it work. I think there maybe sounds minor, but I think what can be really important is this extended producer responsibility that is coming. So we got it this morning also from the one person from the EC. I would say simply explained, every piece of textile that comes on the market, the producer has to pay a small fee. And the fee depends on how sustainable you are, hopefully according to some well agreed on rules, regulations, settings, like LCA-based, product environmental friendly, footprint-based, and so on. It's a small fee. Can it make a difference? Well, one example is that in California, it's one of the most advanced areas where they do carpet recycling. Why is that? Because I think it was more than 10 years ago, they started to have this system for carpets. And this small fee allows the companies to collect the carpets in a, let's say, economic way. And that is a big cost for them that falls away. So you can start to think about recycling. So even if it's only the order of a couple of dollar cents for, I think, a square meter of carpet or a kilogram of carpet, whatever, it's roughly the same. This small thing can leverage a lot to do it. So I think it can really be an important measure that also help to put in place is when we talk about circular textiles in Europe is, let's say, and it clearly says, it's not from me, but illustrative locations. I think it's still wishful thinking for the moment, but this is the view from the side like Eurotex, some big textile players in Europe, is of turnover by getting this into place. For the moment, the key thing is the economic feasibility. As mentioned before, often recycled materials are still much more expensive than the virgin. So how to get out of it? Maybe EPR can help. So if you look, I think, at the circular, maybe a bit less in the slides, but I'm sure through today it appeared. Even it's about the end of life. A lot is about the beginning of the product. It's about the design. And then also the materials choice. I think we will need a lot of novel textile processes there in how we make the items. For example, if we can use better recycled short fibers with the non-woven technology, with other technologies, then I think we make a lot of progress. And also, in the end, if you look at the different recycling technologies, for some you almost need as much energy as for virgin. If you break things down all the way to, let's say, a monomer or even a more basic building block, it costs a lot of energy. So in the end, mechanical recycling can help a lot. But then we have the fundamental issue that we have to separate fibers on fiber level. And there are some technologies, but it's still low TRL. But that's, I think, also one of the key challenges. If you then look at the local aspect, and after all the discussions in the panel and so, I'll do my best, but I think a lot is said. And I found it striking that, I think it was Jesse probably who mentioned it, it's maybe the more difficult that we thought about defining. I think also if you put fundamental change for bio-based, the oil barrel to the leaf, I think is straightforward. Here it's maybe a bit more difficult. My interpretation, I would say, we have on the one side, the opposite of local is the lower left, where you have these gigantic workshops, where a lot of people basically do the robotic work. On the other hand, if you think bio-based, we also have to be careful with this large scale, because it also means, even if I said and we have the space, but still sometimes we do destroy the nature to grow the bio-based and so on. So it's this view of, I think, or the opposite of local can be this large-scale monoculture type of things. What comes instead? Well, I don't know how visible it is with contrast, but some things like the bioregional model, so trying to integrate in a region what you can do local, what do you have, focus on that. And then on the other hand, what we also have in herewear a lot, maybe less focused on today, but is if you have local and you want to do it in Europe, I still think you need a high degree of optimization. Of course, you can also involve people, even if you do it with social. It's less extreme than with the challenge for the recycling or going bio-based, but you can see that we produce still some fibers in Europe, but the majority, of course, is being imported. And especially if you go to the consumption, to the clothing, you see the vast majority, as we all know, is being imported. Again, how can we get out? From European side, is there help from measures, legislation, and so on? And I think also from that side, there's something quite important. It was also touched on this morning. It's about the eco-design for sustainable products regulation. It involves a lot of elements. You see it there on the slide. But I think one of the key things is that it will include how much it's open, of course, but at least a part on transparency, like what can you do with the digital product passport. On the one side for the actual materials, but also definitely with respect to from where does it come, origin, and so on. It will ask for some quality requirements, and what I think is maybe the most, how to say, attractive or intriguing, the right to have repair, which for some products might make a lot of sense. I think for textiles it's really a challenge, but as always, I think it's also really a nice opportunity. And okay, I think at the end of such a long day we can also start to dream a bit. So I think if you look at this part and you put it for the textile industry and we talk about local, it offers quite some opportunities. Besides also like from the inspiring part from the Netherlands. We can offer a lot, I think, of repair, but next to that also like remanufacture. But I think you can also do it with some novel technologies. For example, to recognize the picture, but about a year and a half ago, and the spraying of the clothing, I think you can, with this type of new technologies, do a lot in this area, and also really fit for smaller scale and locally doing it in Europe. And I think that's what's basically here. When we look at local, I think we really have to look for these higher added value activities. Not try to do, let's say, on the level of raw materials, because I think then it will be very difficult. Naturally, I think this local comes also, if you do the smaller scale, that we need the grouping, the working together, the networking, mentioned before. And especially also, I think here is really this option to see how we can integrate more beyond the textile sector. It's the social embedding. Can we have more the models like for cooperatives, for social enterprises and so on. So I hope you are convinced they're still relevant. And to summarize it a bit, and I would join Frédérique with being maybe a bit more provocative, but for me it gives a bit this feeling. I don't know how much you're familiar with the natural science history and the dinos and the mammals happily living for millions of years together. I think we're still very small. It's on the side of the textile industry, but they lived happily together, as said, for millions of years. And if ever there's a big trigger or a disaster, the ones that survived were the small mammals. So let's see. And I think that's also what we really want to do from herewear side, is also to further help that. And that's why we focus so much already from.
What we wanted to share with you, is that we produced fantastic prototypes. And from a quote that I had from someone during one of our workshops, it looks simple, but it is dead complex to do that. And there is a wow effect on the flexi dress and on the day shirt, which is that we had to discover a lot of challenges and we had to develop a lot of solutions to be able to transform this bio-based material, to refine, to improve, to adapt the weaving, the knitting, the finishing, and to make the production easy and connected and checked through, notably through the software which was connecting all the softwares together between Circular Fashion and between Buyle and Queen of Row and Sketch and people like that. What we wanted to share with you is that also we are all throughout the project we focused on the stakeholders engagement, community engagement. And again, a quote which was selected is design, test, improve, redesign, re-improve and retest, re-improve all the times. And do that all the time with the communities. Not only the consortium, which is a community in itself, because as it was described today, the chemistry between the partnership was very great, but also use the outsiders community which are surrounding us and which will be able to experiment solutions, to give feedbacks, and to help uptake of strategies being real, because they have been tested in real life conditions. What we wanted to share with you is also impact. You know, we have been talking through change, and it is very difficult to change bad habits, and we have bad habits coming from the hundreds of years of linear development of the production of textile and clothing sector. But we believe that with such example as herewear, we can make a deep awareness of something that is going to be able to change in the future. And you know, this is a much promising things that we described in herewear, a much promising project, because we have these waste-based loops, we have this relocalization, we have the purposeful production which was all along the way. So, how we want to help you now, we have developed the herewear resources. Magic. We have developed 40 resources which are at the same time very wide and very deep. Very wide for accessibility, very deep because there are lots of depth into these resources. And what we have been developing, of course, the contents and the look, because we need to have these resources being bright orange, as Maria was telling us, but also because we developed them together with a very systemic approach. So we did that with UAL, and unfortunately Rosie cannot join. Rosie Onberker could not join today, but she designed this schema to illustrate how rigorous and how multiple approaches to stakeholder engagement we needed to shape and to guide the curation of the resources. So it is not just a summary of what we have been doing, but it is something which has been developed into a constantly agile way and deep way to be checking that we were doing the right thing. So basically those 40 resources are on 4 themes and 5 types. The 4 themes is the themes that we have been talking through throughout the day, which are the circular strategies, the bio-based technologies, the local models, and the materials, because we cannot do anything, we cannot do the flexi dresses if we have nothing about the wheat. But we also have, for people who are looking into transversal approaches, we also design the resources through types. So you can have and you can download things which are very easy and very useful for you, like flexi dress and the ethical shirt, all the use cases that we have been capitalizing to be developing those resources. And these are the cards that you will find in the hub resources, which are absolutely public, with the little pictograms that illustrate what is behind. And all this was the width of the resources. This is the depth of resources. If you click on these resources, there you will be finding not only a summary and what it was all about, but you will find key takeaways, downloadable documentation, people to follow, and scientific links. Obviously, we are not completely, we haven't completely finalized these resources because it's a lot of work. But we wanted to benefit from that Berlin conference to have a soft launch of this feedback from real people all throughout the project. So we still wanted. Look out for our survey, for which we need a deadline in July 2024, and look out for the official launch webinar of the full resources in September 2024. Use the Sketch and the Queen of Row platform with discount prices till December 2024 and benefit from the membership of the herewear TCBL, because as Jessie explained, the governance of the herewear community is in TCBL hands. And grow with TCBL Association, which is an association which
So thank you very much, Frédérique and Guy, for these last words on our herewear event.